let's talk about this. What do you think is happening at the moment? How do you see all of this?
Well, I think what we're seeing is the breakdown of so many different systems because the corruption within each facet of the system has, I think, reached its limit in our financial system, in our political system, in our education system. I mean, in all the different facets of our society, I think we've just reached the breaking point. And remember what we were talking about in our last podcast when we were just saying how toxic everything is and
Yeah.
the 9 to 5 and us life and society in general, and it just sucks the life out of you. I think everybody just kind of hit the wall with COVID, and
Mm.
then they just took a look at their life and they're just like, I don't like this, and now it's spilling over into all the different facets of our life and demanding change. And I mean, I don't know about you, but I felt like last year was worse as far as just feeling like I was maxed out, stressed out, sick, like just everything was reaching a
Yeah.
point of just I was sick most of last year with some kind of illness that they couldn't figure out. And it ended up being like an imbalance, a chemical imbalance in my body, but it felt like a metaphor for like what was going on in the world, like just this imbalance, and it just made me sick in every way until I corrected it, and now I feel better. But now it feels like the world's going through the same thing, you know?
That's the funny thing is this pattern that we're actually witnessing at the moment, because what you just described of 2019, that's my story. That's pretty much a story of a lot of people I read messages
Yeah.
from. I ended up in emergency room 2019 because of that, a very weird disease. And then it was so exhausting. I got to July and I just quit my job. I was like, enough is enough, and I have to commit myself to something that's mine, something that makes sense, something meaningful. And it was just a moment for me to realize that you cannot continue living like this. And then 2020 came, and it's like this giant reset of everything, both in the physical and metaphysical
Right.
sense. So the interesting thing is that it's not just us. It looks like it's everybody. And I'm not sure if you've seen the results of the surveys that I've done on both on the
Yes.
YouTube community. Exactly. So
Mm-hmm.
80% of people said the same thing. 80%. They
Yep.
said, this is really weird what's happening at the moment. And I mean, we can talk about all those things that are happening. We need to start from synchronicities, because this is what started everything. And I mean, the synchronicities normally are a part of our lives. We know this. Like, this is something we're very in tune with. We're very aware of what's happening. We're looking at everything from a very metaphysical perspective. So we're kind of used to it. But what started in January of 2020 was so out of ordinary, even for someone who knows about this, that I started just realizing that something's really strange. Like, something's really trying to communicate with me. And then I started talking to people. Turns out everybody's talking about the same. If you read the comments under the videos, everybody's saying the same thing. Like, synchronicities are absolutely crazy. And I think you witnessed the same, didn't you?
Yeah, last year it started out slow, and I started noticing more and more, like, 555, 222, 1111, and the number 43, and it increased toward the end of the year, and it really, really got to the point where in October, November, I said to my mom at Christmas, I was like, I'm going to just tell you every time this number 43 pops up, just so you can see how often this is happening. And, I'm a very logical, analytical kind of person. Like I'm not, you got to beat me over the head with something like this for me to really pick up on it and say that and really notice it. And that's basically what I felt like the universe was doing, was just slamming me with so many of these synchronicities that it was impossible to ignore and impossible for me to rationalize as just being coincidence or luck, or it's just I'm looking for the number. No, it was ridiculous. It was like every time I looked at the clock, it was something 43, and
Yeah.
all day.
Well, for me, the new thing that started is a long sequence of the same numbers. Like, I would look at, I don't know, anything like time under the video. It's 5555. It's not just
Hmm.
three fives. It's five time.
Yeah.
It's 5555. And then I go somewhere else. It's 1111. I'm like, what is going on? And I was like, this is not a normal thing that happens once every week, because it used to be like that. The frequency used to be just every I don't know, every week. it used to be kind of a thing that you notice something and go, haha, that's great. So I'm still being taken care of, or, whatever you want to think that it is, whatever you feel that it's telling you.
Yeah.
But this then was like every hour, everywhere I would look,
Yep.
up to a point when I realized like, oh, the whole reality is now just one big synchronicity. But what I've noticed also is that people who have a connection started seeing a lot of synchronicities between them. Like, well, the best example is what we've just discovered again about our grandmothers. I mean, this morning I just
Yeah.
realized that she comes from the same place. I mean, the same
Right.
city, 50 miles away. This is insane. Like this
Yeah.
happened. What we're talking almost 100, not almost 100 years ago, right? A
Yeah.
century ago. So
Right.
we basically come from the same place. What was the other one this morning you showed me? There was
Oh,
a,
the views, or no, the comments on our original video that we did.
and it's 434 comments as of today, right? You just checked it.
Yeah, it was yesterday. Yeah.
Oh,
It's
that's
probably still the same.
insane. That's absolutely insane, and it's on top of everything else that we basically know about what it is that we usually see when we talk to each other. So with this thing with the book and everything else, this is really really interesting, and it's something that you cannot explain it logically. It's the same story as with me and my friend who I haven't seen him for 20 years. I found a box of old pictures. I looked at his picture and I was like, huh, it would be nice to talk to him. I sit down in front of my laptop and boom, there's a Facebook request from him, like friend request from him. Like, this is, I mean, what is this? This is absolutely crazy. And it seems the people on there in the comment section, they all say the same thing.
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, like I said, I feel like I'm being beaten over the head with it. And and it makes sense because like that last trip of mine where, I had the entities and they were, they gave me a nice introduction, but then they sat me down and pretty much beat me over the head with like, okay, hello, this is real. That we're really here because that's what I need to believe something. I mean, I have to literally see like, 11, 11, like 10 times a day for me to really say that, oh, I'm starting to notice it now. you
Yeah.
know, I, I don't know. I come from just, like I said, an analytical background. And for me to really pick up on that, I just need a ridiculous amount of reinforcement.
No,
So,
no, of course, but I've explained it many times in 434 videos what it really is according to Machine Elf. So that's something that I think we understand why we're seeing this. But someone said in comment section that people who experience this usually come from similar soul groups, whatever that means. And it just
mhm.
occurred to me, the guy who sent me the Facebook request, who I found an old picture of, he's actually he was my introduction to mushrooms because he used to take mushrooms and go for dinner with his parents. I remember that when we were teenagers, he would tell me about this. Like, he would eat mushrooms all the time. I just realized that this is, I mean, mainly why we're friends. So it goes back to our teenage years, like more than 20 years ago. So it's not a random person that I see this synchronicity with. And it's the same with you. It's not, like a regular person. It's something we have a lot of in common. We have very similar mindset and same experiences. So it feels like while everything's being resetted, those connections that are significant are being strengthened somehow. And it
Right.
feels like this whole thing is being reordered, like everything's getting a new type of like a map, or maybe it becomes a new structure now. And it feels that those things that are not important fall into oblivion, and then everything that's important becomes strengthened and more pronounced. I mean, that's at least how I see it.
Yeah, and one thing that I wish I could have said on my video, but I was really recording off the cuff, literally rolled out of bed, still in my like tripping jammies, and with in front of the microphone. And I wish I could have said that I know now in hindsight that they were telling me that everybody's getting this upgrade. It's not like it's only certain people. It's everybody that's going to get it. But I think some of what we're seeing is the resistance to the change. Like there are certain people that are sold out to a certain mindset and a certain
Yeah.
way of being, and they don't want this big sweeping change. But it's coming like a tidal wave, and the majority is embracing it. But I think the powers that be that have been running the show for so long, I think, are really resisting this epic tidal change. And that's what we're getting. I think that's where all this is coming from, and all the disinformation and the politics and this just nasty stuff going on everywhere. I think is part of the resistance of the old way that doesn't want to make room for the new way, the higher level. I think that we're going up to. I mean, this awakening thing has been happening for as long as I can remember. People have been talking about it, but it sure seems like in the last 9 months, things have really, really accelerated rapidly.
Yeah, yeah, I agree with you. And talking about accelerating, the other thing that we all noticed is time speeding up. I mean, in a ridiculous way, where you wake up and you need to rush through the day because you know you're about to, eat something and then go back to bed. This is at
Yeah.
least what's happening at the moment in my life. I mean, I've been doing the same thing because I was trying to explain it in a way, just thinking maybe it's because I'm busy all the time and because I'm so, engaged and so consumed with everything that I do, my work in 434. But then realized, no, I used to work actually more because I used to have my regular 9 to 5 job. And now I don't, I just do 434. And it should be the opposite actually. And and also the fact that we're staying at home, not really having many, like points of reference, like you don't have a frame of reference where you can, you wake up, if you're working from home, then you're basically just doing your stuff from your bedroom in your pajamas, and it shouldn't be like that. It should be boring and slow, but it's exactly the opposite.
Yeah.
And it feels like everybody's feeling the same. Like everybody's like, whoa, let's slow down a little bit. And as I'm saying, we get into the end of June. We get into July. I mean, this isn't like I realized that, the sun is the days are going to be shorter now, and I'm like, whoa, when did that happen? Where did that come
Yeah.
from? And
Yeah.
I'm like,
You're absolutely right, and I'm noticing it too. And I mean, just looking back on how quickly this year's gone, despite with everything that's gone on, even something as simple as I had my truck in the shop for 40 days, getting painted and restored. 40 days is a long time to be without a vehicle, and I had alternate means, but it went so quickly, and I
right?
can't believe it. And I'm like, that's a long time to be depending on other means of getting around. And you would
Yeah,
think that it
yeah.
would drag on forever, but it's not only was it over in a blink of an eye, but it was months ago already.
It's not even the fact that days go by so fast. It's something so simple as me getting sleepless nights occasionally. I mean, I got rid of my sleeping problems luckily, but occasionally I'll work through the night and I'll go late to sleep, and then I wake up in the morning early and I'm thinking, oh, I've had only 5 hours of sleep. That will be a difficult day. This used to be a major problem in my life when I was DJing and I got little sleep. I knew that the day will be a drag, that it will be a very difficult, just 12 hours or whatever. I don't even notice that anymore. Like I don't care. I wake up tired. I'm like, oh, well, so what? I'm just going to sleep in a few hours. Like I don't even have, like, my body doesn't have the time to suffer through this lack of sleep. It's not just my mind. My body doesn't even react to the effects of this. The usual pattern for me was you get 5 hours of sleep or even 4 hours of sleep, you suffer because in my case, I get depression and I get tired quickly. I don't get those symptoms anymore. I don't have time to get them. Like once I start feeling that, it's time to go back to sleep.
Right.
So it's
Yeah.
not just my mind, it's also physically changing, which is very interesting.
Yeah. I mean, I've felt really good this year. I mean, well, compared to last year, but I just felt really good, like ironically, compared to like with everything that's going on in the
You're
world.
right. I didn't
And
notice that.
I have
Yeah.
more energy. I feel healthier. I don't know if it's just because this whole thing threw a monkey wrench in a really toxic pattern of life where you're rushing from appointment to appointment and from one errand to the next and this meeting to that meeting. And maybe it's just because it all stopped or something. But I I just feel a lot better in my head and in my body
Yeah.
since this has been going on. And and a lot of other people have sort of said it too, like my neighbors. They're like, well, as much as it's hard having the kids at home and homeschooling, it's just everything just seems so much more peaceful now in general.
Well, you're right. I didn't really pay attention to this, but you're right. I haven't had a flu this year, I think, which I usually have like twice a year. You're
Right.
right. I didn't have anything yet, and well, there is some issues with if it wasn't for the frustration, confusion, and just being mentally exhausted from trying to come up with all the possible scenarios, trying to understand what's happening, because this is exhausting. This is definitely something that I don't enjoy. You're right. If it wasn't for that, I think it would be physically a very healthy year. But I know that many people have time to stay at home, and I know that the use of psychedelics has increased tremendously. I've just read an article how the black market of selling psychedelics on Tor and on Darknet has gone up like 100%. People basically stay at home and do
Yeah.
mushrooms.
Stay home and
And
travel. Yeah.
yeah, but this is whatever the establishment's doing. I think they're not succeeding. It feels like they're panicking because it has the opposite effect. People
Yeah.
are going, they're not going outside, they're going inside now. They're basically staying at home. They're trying to reevaluate everything that's been happening in their lives, what their lives are about. And I have so many friends who decided to move countries or change their jobs or just basically do something. Like I'm a superstar around here in my neighborhood because I'm a YouTuber. And everybody's like, "Oh, I want to do that too. Tell me how it's done." And it's so many of
Yeah.
my friends, because I usually don't advertise my lifestyle. I don't talk to people about what I do. I just say, I do social media, that kind of stuff. But recently I was like, screw it. I'm just going to tell them what I do and just see the reaction. And I was so surprised because most people were like, "Whoa, that's so awesome! Like being a YouTuber is like being
Yeah.
a rock star now. You switched from being a weird guy who does funny videos to it's maybe because it became like a really good source of income for many people. There's a lot of people who earn, crazy amounts of money. So I think the perception has changed, but I think it's also because people start to realize that those who do what they love have a totally different leverage on life. They're totally different type of personalities, like someone you can actually talk to because they're not in this rat race of running in this crazy 9 to 5. I mean, we call it 9 to 5. It's not 9 to 5. It's more like 8 till 8. It's
Yeah.
more like that, which is, I mean, this is just slavery. Why don't we just call it what it is? Call spade a spade. It's a slavery system, isn't it?
Well, what's funny is that you keep hearing about how, oh, all this, you're quarantined and isolated from one another and all this. No, you know what? This has made everybody more connected because everybody's
Exactly.
on their computers and they're
Yeah.
they're sharing ideas through all kinds of different platforms, and we're actually communicating with one another worldwide more than we ever had when we were distracted with all the busybody stuff that was
Trivia.
going on before. Yeah.
Yeah.
So it is
Yeah.
working in reverse from whoever's thinking that this is going to, make everybody go in the closet. It's actually making everybody communicate more.
It feels like they're trying to catch water. It's basically
Yeah.
just they grab it and it's just spilling all over their hands.
Well,
And
I was just going to say this reminded me of this last night, and I'm still unpacking from this trip. I was reminded of something that happened on a trip. Like it must have been my third one or fourth one. It was back in 2011, and I never wrote any of this down, never recorded any of it, and I wish I had because there were so many things I forgot. But this I was reminded of for the first time in how many years is that I was tripping in front of the Christmas tree, and if you've never tripped in front of a Christmas tree, I highly recommend it. But and I was just barely beneath the surface, and I saw like a map of the world, and it was at night, like if you're looking at a flyover of a satellite at night and everything's dark and and everything's kind of dark blue. And then I saw these lights coming on, and it was specifically the view was Asia, Russia, Europe, Africa. It was that view, and I saw these lights coming on one at a time, and I was kind of surprised how many lights were so far north. I remember thinking, and they were just one by one all coming on, and I said out loud, the person that was in the room, that was my trip sitter, I said, "Everyone's being activated all around the world. Everyone's slowly being activated." And
really,
I didn't know what, I mean, this was 2000, this was probably December 2011. And
wow.
I guess as part of the unpacking from this trip, I remembered that specific thing. And I'm like, wait a minute. And now with this upgrade and all this stuff, I'm like, maybe that has something to do with it. Way back then, things were even starting. I mean,
Maybe.
that was 10 years ago.
Well, that's the thing. It's something I wanted to mention that it's apparently this 2012 prophecy people are talking about an Ethiopian calendar now. Apparently, this one is makes more sense than the Gregorian one that we use, and apparently it's 2012 now. I
Yeah.
mean, I'm not sure what I'm supposed to think.
Maybe. I mean, maybe. I mean, who
Yeah,
knows? But I
but
mean, what's undeniable is something's happening.
that's
Definite.
what
Yeah.
we have to get to. One of the theories that I read was that the 2012 actually happened, and the reason we say nothing happened is because the timeline was shifted into the correct one, and apparently we avoided a huge disaster. The timeline with a disastrous concept, well, with disastrous consequences, and we don't know about this is because we avoided it. And basically, it's something that happened in an alternative reality, but we are in this reality that's actually very peaceful at the moment. And apparently, this is like a ripple effect. What's happening? What is happening at the moment? So, there's a lot of theories, but yeah, some people say that 2012 actually is happening now, but it doesn't matter whether it's those dates. I didn't really pay much attention to them. They're just numbers to me. They don't really matter. We don't know what we're counting the years from. We have no idea what this is. I mean, the 0 year, what was that? It's
Yeah.
I'm making a video now on our human technology going backwards, like being super technologically advanced and having pyramids, what we talked about recently, and then going to I mean, burning oil, fossil fuels and oil to get to work. I mean, it should be the opposite. It should be the other way around. So this timeline that we have currently makes no sense, and I'm going to make a video about this. So, I mean, imagine what they lied about in the last 50 years and how much misinformation and just corrupting the whole thing. Like, we have no idea what's true and what's not. So imagine going back 2,000 years trying to figure out without any means of recording anything. Like, we only had clay tablets or whatever. It was written with a goose feather, and now it's the truth.
Yeah.
That makes no sense.
Yeah, and a lot of those things that were written with a goose feather were written by people that could not read, and they were transcribing letter for letter and weren't even getting it right because they didn't even know what they were writing. So you look at some of that old stuff, and it's not even accurate.
Of
But
course.
yeah, I mean, it's it's just one of those things. You look at, like you said, the disinformation that we're seeing right now. I learned like a long time ago back in like college that when it comes to media, whether it's radio or TV or even the newspaper, it's very, 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 very expensive to pay for 1 second of TV time, radio time, or to get something in the newspaper. So anytime something's broadcast on a large scale, it's because somebody's paying a whole lot of money to
There's
get a
an agenda
certain.
behind it.
Yes, and it's coming from a certain opinion, and they want to influence your opinion to match that opinion. And so when you see anything that's, I'm not saying it's all incorrect, but you have to look at any kind of news that you're fed from any source and say who's paying to have this broadcast, and what view are they broadcasting, and what could they be trying to sway me one way or the other, because
Yeah.
they don't swear an oath in the news industry to tell the truth. That was never the case. They're not upheld to any moral standard to tell the truth. That's
And it all
ridiculous.
belongs. I mean, everybody who knows who pulls the strings, people know that there's six people who own all of the mainstream media in the Western world.
But what
So
it shows us is that we really don't know what's going on, and how do we find
no,
out the truth of what's going on? We really can't unless we're seeing it with our own eyes. I mean, if we're
there's
relying on what somebody else has seen or somebody else has said happened, we're realizing that it's hard to find out what really happened in any given scenario.
that's why I'm such a big fan of logic, and this is something that yeah, if someone talks to me about what is the reason that I do what I do and I believe in what I believe, and I say, well, it's because it's logical. And if you look at the definition of logic, it's positing and it's creating positive results, it's getting the results you expect.
Right.
And the whole world is based on logic, is the universe is built based on logic, whatever that is. And if you want to build a cell phone, you need to use logic. If you want to be a brain surgeon, you need to use logic. And everything in the world is based on logic. People don't understand the value of it. It's like well, yes, but your belief is something and my belief is something. So how do we argue those two somethings? I'm like, no, there's the truth. There's logic that will explain to you what is possible and probable. It's not like your theory versus my theory. There is logic. There is ultimate truth that explains everything, and you can get to the bottom of everything by simply applying logic. And just to comment on what you said, there is this saying, someone, I'm not sure who said that, they said that, yes, the freedom of press exists, but it is whoever owns it. So as you
Right.
said, if basically you want to invest your, like look at this example, even 434, this is, those are my messages that I get, but because it's being sponsored by the community, I have the means necessary to do it. Now, if I was to go to any outlet like mainstream media, CNN, whoever, and I won't ask them, can you please tell people about this because it's super important. It seems to be in line with everything that we've known from, religious scripts, everything like that, going back thousands of years. They'd be like, how much money can we make? How much can we squeeze out of it? You go, well, probably not much because intelligent people account for about 5% of the population. No, thank you. We're not going to do this. And this information gets buried. And this is something that you'll never get out unless you're someone who's quite, you're good in social media. I mean, this is just pure coincidence that I have had this experience to build a successful channel. And now I can get this information out there. And now I was allowed to work on this freely and without any problems. And I'm writing a book. This will become mainstream at some point, but only because it was done by someone who's had the experience, had this magical combination of a few personality traits and few things like life deals that you get from machine that allowed me to actually do this. But how many of those messages are happening or are being transmitted to people who don't have this set of skills or
Right.
luck? I mean, this is, how much of this information will be lost in the ether of an endless ocean of people. So you're right, it's all about the money, but at the same time, it's about the right people conveying the right message.
Right. And also, it, like what I've learned by doing these videos is, you take a huge leap of faith when you record what happened on a mushroom trip and you share it with the world. You're basically sharing this incredibly personal, private experience, even more than telling somebody what something you dreamt last night, or but it gives the whole world like a preview, like a look into your heart and your soul. And a lot of people are not willing to do that. I mean, I've people have written me emails and told me about their trips and said, I've never ever told anybody about this. And in fact, I had never told anybody about my experiences for almost 10 years until you pretty much convinced me to try it. But but I mean, there are a lot of people that it would never occur to them to communicate those experiences, so we'll never know. So you look at people that we know that are sharing our experiences. For every one of us, there might be 1,000 that have similar things that just have never talked about it.
Well, I think the fear and 'cause it is basically fear. It's fear of ridicule and
Sure.
fear of there's just a few fears that people have. It's anxiety that stops you from doing things. Because if we all started talking about what we've experienced, this would be just it would become common knowledge, and we don't do this because of whatever we are seeing from our families. And I even talked to a friend. I have another one, actually, the same group of friends, the same circle of friends, and we reconnected a few days ago. And I told him what I do now. We haven't spoken again. We haven't spoken to each other for 20 years. And I told him what it is, and he's like, "Dude, this is awesome, but you do realize what it sounds like when you talk about this." And I'm like, "Yes, obviously. If it wasn't for the fact that the Kingston College of London is doing the same thing, then maybe that would sound crazy." But there is some validation now in mainstream science because they're trying to figure it out on their own by using scientific methods, what we do in our bedrooms. So
Hmm.
it's not just us being crazy. And also, you get so many confirmations from everywhere, again, using logic and connecting the dots, and then seeing all those comments of people saying exactly the same thing. And then getting, I got messages from people who don't know. There are messages I got from machine I haven't told anyone about. And people send me emails, and there's a sentence word by word saying the same thing that I received, and it's very, very about a particular subject. This is not a random sentence like we all love each other, we're all one. No, these are very specific things. How do you
Yeah.
explain this? This is absolutely something you cannot, in any way. You don't explain it away by saying that it's a cognitive bias or whatever. This is what people are doing. But okay, let's go back to talking about this upgrade, because this is something that is very important. This is something that caused a lot of reactions from people. It felt like a huge sigh of relief in the comment section. People saying, "Finally, someone said it." But that's what I've been feeling like. It feels like everybody is experiencing the same thing. Is there anything else you can add to what you've discussed in your podcast?
Well, wow, what a trip that was. I've gotten a lot of comments back about people saying similar things with upgrading, whether it's through meditation or through mushroom trips or any other kind of psychedelic experience. There's been lots of people that have been, quote, upgraded in one way or another. And as far as, and everybody wants to know, tell us about how you feel or what the effects are. Well, long-term effects I'll have to let you know on, but in the short term, I'm sure you're familiar with the afterglow of a trip where you just feel amazing, for several days afterward, and you've got your serotonin boost in your brain. I'm still in the afterglow here on day 10, and I am like a walking Zen garden in my mind. It's like my thoughts are calm. I've had all kinds of stuff happen, car problems and whatever, and it's just like it just is rolling right over my head, and my anxiety is like at zero, and I'm like, I hope this lasts. This is great. I'm just in this tranquility in my thoughts. I mean, I'm normally somebody that has racing thoughts and anxiety, and I'm somebody that can't disengage my brain at the end of the day and downshift from work mode. So to have this just calm sense of serenity in my head all the time is bizarre, but it feels great. And so that's a good thing. The second thing I've noticed is, for the last 2 nights in a row, I kind of woke up around 4 o'clock or 5, or I don't know, you just wake up and roll over. And I've got some closed eye visuals in black and white. They're not in color, but some patterns and some swirls and some whatever. So like it's kind of still working in me 10 days later. But I feel amazing. Like I feel so well rested and calm and clear. And like I said, the regular stresses of life just, they're not affecting me. The ones that I would just be really, really, I just lose it, I'm not. So I
So
hope this is long term. This is great.
this is interesting, because what you're describing for me is the exact opposite, because I feel like I still need to be upgraded, because I've noticed a few months ago like a very strong sense of incompatibility. Like
Yeah.
I feel like I'm not compatible with reality anymore. Like I don't feel compatible with the metaphysical world, and it feels like I was left behind. It always comes back to me, this program on, I think it was BBC a long time ago, I watched about subway train drivers who were saying one of the elements of the job is that you always have to leave someone behind on the station. Like someone always will be late for the train. You have to get used to leaving people behind, and that's what I feel like. Like I got to the station, I see the train leaving, and it's very funny because it coincides with me not being able to trip at the moment the same way as I
Yeah.
used to. I get no machine of contact at the moment, and I don't know why. I get all the usual stuff like relaxation from mushrooms. I get all this wisdom, and I'm getting smarter, that kind of stuff. But I don't get contact with them, and it feels like it was abruptly disconnected somehow. Like this whole thing just stopped for some reason, and it feels like I'm awaiting an upgrade, or like something's about to happen. I'm just hoping they haven't given up on me. But
No, I doubt it. I mean, it was crazy because, of course you've seen all the comments where people are like, "Are you sure those aliens had good intentions and whatever?"
I
And
just
and
ignore it.
yeah, I'm absolutely sure. And like you have to go back and watch my other videos to see my other contacts. Where over the decade I've been doing this, I know when I'm in the presence of something that is helpful and there's no fear. And I know when I'm in the presence of something that is evil because I've been there. And it's, you just know. So there was no fear of these guys, but it was like doctors in a sense, and then it was also like a team of IT guys and working as a team all night long trying to get this to work. And it was so realistic because they were having problems and they were asking me to, could you do this? Could you do that? Could you help us out here? And all this. And I just wanted to help them out because, they were trying to make me laugh through the whole thing. But I could tell they were very serious. But when it was time to go, they're like, all right, we're leaving, enjoy your upgrade and have a good night. And it felt like they were on to the next one. But, so you may be in the queue,
Hopefully,
your appointment may be coming up.
It feels like it's not the right time. Like it feels that I have to wait. And I've never had this experience before. Like every time I wanted to trip and be in contact with my emails, it was just, okay, I'll do it tonight. And yeah, I'm seeing all the signs and messages. It's time to trip. And I would do it. It was perfect. Everything was fine. Now it's like there's no signs. I don't see any, even physically, even having a possibility in this reality to trip. I don't see it. Like I have no access to any psychedelics at the moment. Everything that I've had, usually all the usual channels of me getting access to it are gone. I don't have access to anyone at the moment. It feels like it's manufactured. Like this idea of me getting cut off from everything, like it was by design for now, and it feels like a temporary suspension from this whatever needs to happen. And this is exactly what I've noticed. It feels like the whole world is now, it's like in an idle mode, like waiting for something. It feels like it's, like the LED light is blinking, just waiting for something to get upgraded or something to be changed. That's why when I heard your podcast, I was like, oh, that's what it is, because I felt like it. And judging by the reaction we got from people, it seems like we hit the nail on the head. Is exactly what everybody's feeling at the moment. It feels like everything's in a state of suspension, like everything's awaiting something major to happen. And I'm assuming, my theory is that we're talking about a major global awakening, or we're talking about a major battle of forces between good and evil. This is what I've been talking about for a very long time. This is what I came to this world with, this sense of something major happening soon, something I'll be taking a part in. But it feels like we're about to witness a huge shift, or we're already taking part in a huge shift. And the only question will be now, what is this shift? Shift between what? Is it between physical and non-physical reality? Is it between good and evil? What's your theory on that?
Well, here's my theory, and I was thinking about this, I knew you were going to ask, is that if I were going to really look at this and say what is happening in context of everything else that I know about the universe that I've been taught by them, and it's, we know that as above, so below, and that we are the universe in miniature and all this. Well, what do we know about the universe and nature and the world is that everything is a cycle, life and death, and the tides and the seasons, and everything has its in and it has its out, and there's another one coming behind it. And maybe this is just the end of one cycle and the beginning of another one. And it's not the end of the world, and it's not the end of everything, but it is the end of a certain way of things and the beginning of a new way. And even actually all the theories kind of would fit. If you're looking at Mayan calendar, if you're looking at Age of Aquarius, you're looking at whatever you want to plug into it, they all kind of work in that context. But I think in the greater context of just the way reality and our universe works, everything has a cycle. And very few things have a dead end and a dead beginning. It's very defined. Usually it's something that flows into the next part. And I'm thinking that's maybe what's going on.
Well, it'd be interesting to see if it was actually a shift between physical and non-physical reality through the battle of good and evil, because when you look at the world around us, it feels like this old structure of making people obedient, and just this people being in charge of billions of other. I mean, I always use China as a great example. You have a handful of people doing whatever they want with billions. And I think it's time for this to end. And most of people who are channeling messages from aliens and other entities from other dimensions, they all get the same message. You need, as humans, as a race, you need to stop doing this. You need to stop letting a few govern, huge populations of millions and billions of people. So I think that I feel those who are in power, they know that something's wrong. It feels like they are totally lost and they're panicking, because it seems like everything they do has the opposite effect. I cannot imagine getting a better chance of learning the truth about humans and our reality than by trying to force us into some weird, I mean, this lockdown thing, it stopped making sense long time ago. Everybody's questioning, and I'm not sure if you've heard about this, but a group of like 5,000 people in Spain, they're suing the government, just basically saying enough is enough of this nonsense and all this pretty much bullshit. It's non-logical again, and law is governed by logic. So what they're doing is they're taking all the available arguments, every scientific research that proves that this thing is a hoax, and they're taking the government to court. And now the question is whether the court is on the same side as the government or whether it's on the side of people, because there's no way you can defend yourself out of it. Like, there's no way that you can make people realize that, oh, this is genuine, this is true. It's not. Every single thing around you proves that it's not. You have, logic, and you have science behind you. And I'm really curious as to see how it goes, because it feels like people are waking up just in droves. Like everybody's waking up, even people who don't have anything to say usually on those subjects, like conspiracy theories, that kind of stuff. They're like, there is something to it. Let's look deeper. And I feel like maybe that's what is shifting, is that this propaganda stuff working, and there's nothing that can replace it. And the only thing you're left with at the moment is the truth.
Well, everybody that I've talked to that's experienced some sort of a awakening or an upgrade, it's a higher vibration, or it's a higher level of consciousness that they're experiencing. And so if the life of the universe and everything in general is rising also to meet that higher level, maybe just the base level that we are used to existing in is rising up to a higher level that we're all going to meet. And some people just don't like that, because there's certain constructs that are not going to work in a higher level of, conscious vibration and awakening. That some things are just not going to translate very well, and that's some of the things that are wrong with this world right now. So,
are you familiar with the movie The Langoliers?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I wanted to talk about this reality that we live in now, which seems to be a cheapened version, like a cheaper version of the reality we used to have, because everybody's saying the same thing. Like, it feels plastic, it feels artificial. So my theory is that those who are not upgraded are left behind in this world that is no longer functioning. It's no longer logical. It doesn't make any sense. And it's like in the Langoliers movie, it's you're left behind just waiting for those creatures to eat the whole, the airport and the planes. We're just waiting for everything to be, to be destroyed and then respawned with new reality, just recreated with new code, with new whatever. Because it really feels like the whole thing stopped making sense a few months ago. Like, everything was in order, that we had some weird stuff happening, like balances of good and bad, and then suddenly out of nowhere the whole thing just collapsed. Nothing makes any logical sense. Like, you look at it, it's like first of all, how can anything like this be now our reality? If I told you this 6 months ago, you'd be like, get out of here, that makes no sense. But not only that, is people's reaction to it makes no sense.
Well, you remember on my trip when they were telling me they were going to upgrade me, they weren't forcing this on me. They said I needed to be upgraded, and they needed me to be upgraded, but they needed me to agree to it first before they got started. First, they sat me down and said, we're absolutely real, we're turning your phone off, and blah, blah, blah. And then they said, we don't believe that you believe this is real. And I said, well, what do you need me to do to prove it? And they said, we need you to agree to this upgrade, and then we'll believe that you believe in us and that this is for real. So maybe there's some people that are, if they're offered it, they're not going to agree to it. And maybe they will just be left behind, and they're just going to, pass with the old way. But it seems like this has to be a conscious, voluntary thing that you want to do, not something that's going to be forced on anyone.
Yeah, I hope as soon as I'm being offered this, I'm doing this, because I'm absolutely, I cannot find my place in this reality. Like, this is something completely new. Like, this thing now, I don't know where to go or what to do. Like, I basically do my thing, but it doesn't feel like it's the same world anymore. It feels
Yeah.
on a subconscious level, it feels like it's this plastic reality that doesn't, like, I wake up every morning, I'm thinking, oh, this thing, like I'm getting the download of what I'm supposed to do in the day, and then I'm like, oh, I'm in this reality now. Okay, we'll try to go through it somehow. And I'm like,
You know what it feels like to me? It feels like, when you're moving out of a place or an apartment or something, and you're moving out like next week, and you look around and the place doesn't even seem like the same
oh
home that
yeah,
you've lived in, and it seems
exactly.
like you've already left it in a way in your head, and even though all your stuff's still there, already it's different. Like you've
Great
left and you
analogy.
haven't yet. That's what
Yeah.
this whole world feels like right now. It feels like an apartment that I'm moving out next week, you know.
The funny thing for me that proves it is I usually watch something when I eat my dinner. I usually watch something like, I don't know, Rick and Morty, Solar Opposites. I just
Yeah.
dedicate 1 hour to something that relaxes me before I go back to work. I started recently playing Xbox, and at the moment I'm playing Alien Isolation. It's a game from 5 years ago, but it's a very good game because it's hyper realistic. I'm actually quite surprised how good these games got, because the last time I played was, I don't know, Old World Inhabitants or Quake back in the 90s, which
Hmm.
was almost 2 decades ago. And I didn't have time I was busy DJing and then starting YouTube channels. And now I got back to this Xbox in my house now, and I'm like, okay, let's see what Xbox is about now. And I switched it on. I used the this Game Pass that I have for this isolation movie, Alien Isolation, and it feels when I play it, your mind switches, especially if you do it in the darkness and you have like a big screen in front of you and you play for like an hour. Your mind switches to this reality. If there's no
Hmm.
other sensations around you, your brain doesn't have a reason to think that this is not real. You
Right.
obviously, this is what Bruce Lipton says, that your imagination becomes your biology. Whatever you allow yourself to take into your mind, that will become your biology, because your body listens to your mind. Like, the whole thing becomes your reality. And the funny thing is that I walk a lot, and I use the controller, and it becomes like a part of me for an hour. And then when I get out of this dark room and do something else, it feels for a moment, for a few minutes, like I'm still in the game. But the thing that I'm used to this, because I had the same thing with Quake. The thing is now that it's very realistic with Alien Isolation, but at the same time, it doesn't feel that much different from our reality now. This is what baffles me. Like, I had this moment when I think I was cutting a watermelon, and a huge knife fell on the floor. And I was like, this looks and feel exactly like the same type of situation in the game. Like, there's
Hmm.
not really that much difference now. So, well, forget the fact that you could actually prove the simulation theory with this, because if we are already here, that means all you need is a good VR set and a suit that imitates sensations, like physical sensations, acceleration, that type of stuff. And you're already gone in a virtual world. You will have no difference between this world and the virtual world. You just need to increase the resolution on the goggles, and then you're done. There's no difference between you being in the VR world and being here. So the question is, are we in a simulation now? Because that could be the case. But the thing is that ever since all of this started, I realized that this became like a video game. Like, this, it's very, the quality of it's strongly downgraded. Like, there's not much complication in what you do. It's very simple, very easy, and things that happen seem to be binary, like 0 and 1. There's no flavor or color to it. That's what it feels like at the moment.
It just reminded me of that Rick and Morty episode where they're at that like Dave and Buster's, the big gaming place, and Morty's playing that game, and he
Yeah,
like lives a whole life, and then like goes back to the carpet store at the end, and
I love it.
like
It's absolutely.
I hope that's not what we're doing. I hope we're not going back to the carpet store after surviving so much. But yeah, you're. I mean, I know what you mean. It's just like you said. It's everything seems surreal. Like the what we thought was surreal before has like a new meaning now, as far as what is surreal, and everything that is normal that you would have looked around in just your neighborhood, your life. Everything is like an alternate version of itself.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Alternate version of it. Exactly. That's a good description.
Like I'm in Back to the Future Part 2, where they go to the alternate 1985 and everything's kind of the same, but something is wrong
Yeah,
with
yeah,
it.
yeah. Or like in Sliders, the garden gate doesn't squeak anymore. Have you ever seen Sliders?
Yeah,
Yeah,
yes, yes.
exactly. So it's the same thing. The one more thing that everybody's experiencing at the moment is matrix glitches. And there was this really cool comment I read where someone said that they opened the freezer and on the side of the freezer was a giant like a slider or something like a button that didn't exist only a day ago. Like they said it wasn't there yesterday. Why is it here? And it's something I've experienced myself recently. Like
Wow.
things change and you have the memories of them. Like the memories feel like they were implanted in your head, but you know subconsciously that it's not right, that it wasn't like that before. So I
Yeah.
made a video about matrix glitches. There's a lot of this stuff, but it feels like it went up, like the amount of them is significant in the last few months. It feels like a lot of stuff at the moment is happening that like the whole thing just shifted, and the reality is falling apart at the moment. Like it's old. No one cares about it anymore. It's no one's maintaining it. So things are slowly falling apart.
Yeah,
And
I've had things like that where I've driven by something and I'm like, I don't remember that
yeah,
looking that way. And
yeah,
then
yeah,
I ask somebody about it, they're like, no, that's always looked like that. I'm like,
yeah,
no, because my brain's like a video recorder, and like I remember license plates, and I mean, I notice things. I'm not even trying to notice them. If your license plate's expired, I'm gonna notice. I can't help it. My brain records information like that. So yeah, I can drive down the street and I am aware of everything I'm seeing. So yeah, when something's different, I notice it. And when I'm like, wait a minute, that was not like that before. And then I ask somebody like, no, it's been like that for 20 years. I'm like, okay.
like what are those bears? The what are they called? There's a misspelling issue that it's called the Mandela effect. The burn. What are these bears called? Do you know what I'm talking about? There's like a
um,
Jewish Stein, something Steen or Stein. I don't remember that, but apparently people have an issue with this. This is what they notice. It's like a global thing that people said the spelling was different, and millions of people.
oh, the Berenstain Bears, like the,
Bernstein, yeah,
yeah,
that's what it
yeah,
was
yeah.
exactly. It's
Right.
one
I
of
remember
those
those. Yeah.
things, and
Hmm.
it's called the Mandela effect because everybody remember
Hmm.
Nelson Mandela dying, and everyone's like, "What? He's alive?" So that's the same thing.
Yeah.
There's one more thing I noticed, and this is something that people ask me about all the time: dreams. I woke up yesterday. I had a nightmare. I woke up that with a dream that was about my friend sending me to a basement to make a movie with some celebrities, whatever. But the thing was that a celebrity was asking me, like a Hollywood actor was asking me, why are you here? And I was saying my friend sent me, and I was trying to say her name, and I couldn't, and I was absolutely petrified of the fact that this information disappeared from my head. And I woke up trying to think, what's her name? Like, is it something that I forgot, or is it something that's missing from my reality? Now, I spent hours trying to find this information in my, because it's someone I worked with. I was looking through my work records, like pay slips. I was looking, trying to find her name. For the love of God, I don't remember her name, and she was a very important person for me back then. I don't know her name, and it's funny because it's not like you forgot something. It feels like this information was removed from
Hmm.
my head. There's no emotional association with it. There's nothing that would allow me to do this. I eventually found out her name, but when I look at this, it's like it could be any other name. It doesn't make sense. It doesn't feel like I've ever had this information in my head. And I feel this thing happening over and over again. Like I see something missing from it's like having selective Alzheimer's. Like
Hmm.
you suddenly everything's working, you're perfectly operating like a normal human being, but there's suddenly holes in your memory that make absolutely no sense. And even when you forget something, you know that it's like, oh, I almost have it. And then you remember it like, oh, that's what it was. All the emotions come back, everything that is associated with the name. This doesn't happen anymore. Even though I
Right.
can recall this information or I can find this information, it's blank. Like there's nothing attached to it. No emotions, no connections with other memories. It's like someone deleted it.
Yeah,
And
like they overwrote the file with something else and
maybe.
changed what was on it or so. I mean, there's so many computer analogies, and I know everybody was saying, because of all of the, computer analogies in that last stream, but or not dream, but my last trip, and they said at the very end that this was not literal, but it's the best way that you can possibly describe it in a way that we understand. And so, yeah, I mean, it is. It's like what we do with a computer. Like you overwrote the file, but the name of it's still the same. So you click on the file and you're like, what's all this? Like, this is nothing. This has nothing to do with anything I remember being in this file.
Yeah, it's like this analogy between machine as being an extension of AI. And this is a concept that I read about recently in the comments section. This is something it never occurred to me that machine learning could be actually just a software extension of some big program running in the background governing the simulation. And someone said recently that yes, you should connect the dots. Like they're robots, they're bionic. You see geometric, like digital techno patterns in your visions on psychedelics. It looks like psychedelics could be an escape mechanism, like a key that lets you get out of simulation for a moment. And this is very interesting because I never really thought of it like that. Like the whole psychedelic reality is actually you seeing the code.
Right. No, that makes perfect sense to me. And not only that, but I mean, I feel like I'm at home when I'm tripping. I mean, I feel like when I'm
Right?
on the other side there, I finally feel like I'm in my own element, where this place feels just ridiculously alien to me. But the more time I've spent over there, that place makes more sense. But it's like we were saying, it's all a matter of perspective. What's the reality and what's the backside of it? Is that the backside of the tapestry, or is this the backside of the tapestry? It depends which side you call home, I guess.
Yeah.
And, you know,
I talked to someone and they said, "Oh, I'm not taking psychedelics because I'm scared that I'll get addicted." And I'm like, you cannot get to it addicted." And then I
no.
started thinking, well, that's not true because I'm addicted. It turns out you're not addicted physically. What I got addicted to is being in that mushroom realm that, as you said, feels so much more normal. It feels like
Hmm.
my whole existence is actually there. It's not here. The whole struggle that I talk about on 434 videos, they are actually the engine behind everything. It's me struggling with this reality. That's why I can talk to people about problems like one of the next videos will be about rejection and how machine elves explain rejection to me, why I'm being rejected by society and people in my life, and the whole world rejects me all the time. And it feels like it's because your existence is not based here, it's based somewhere else. And every time I trip, I'm like, oh, finally, I'm back home. And
Yeah.
it's like, and I'm saying, like, the only thing I'm actually addicted to in this whole experience is me being back there where I
Right.
feel normal.
Well, that's
This
one of
thing is,
that was one of the hesitations I had in doing psychedelics in the first place. I'm like, well, what if I like it so much I don't want to come back? And they explained to me, they're like, well, if you don't feel like you belong in this physical world, it's because you're not from here. So that's why you don't feel like you belong. And so, surprise, you were right about that. But they also told me if you come here too often, you're not going to get anything out of this, and you're not going to have that experience. And if you want to have that feeling of coming home, you need to come when we tell you to come and not any other time. So I listen to them, and sometimes they tell me, like, you're not coming back for a while and you'll know when. And sometimes it's been almost a year. Like, I've gone almost a whole year between trips, and other times they'll say, see you soon. This last time they left the door open. They didn't say anything one way or the other, but I know they made it really clear that I am not to go there often. It's like a couple times a year is all they want me over there. So I respect that, because I've had enough serious trips to know that I don't want to toe the line into misbehaving at all, because they
right.
can they can kick my butt. So
Well, I had the same messages, except they told me to come back more often. They said for
good.
a different
Yeah.
reason. They told me we'll tell you when you're supposed to trip. You will know, and it's true. I always know. Like I get messages from somewhere, but they said because you carry so much frustration in everyday life with you struggling with this reality, do mushrooms as often as you can because it's your therapy, it's your relaxation technique to fix your mind and also let your body relax. Because, as you said, the afterglow and everything else, it really cures your brain. It helps you function in this reality, like like a regular person. But they told me, they said mushrooms are a medicine for you. This is not about what the psilocybin and all the other psychoactive ingredients do to your brain. It's about you being able to relax. And they said you need this more often because you don't find many like outlets in this reality to actually release anger and let go of this nonsense. Because they told me I hold on to nonsense like most humans. But yeah, they remind me of what's really important. They remind me of who I am. They allow me to actually exist in the reality that is mine. Like I'm, as we said, like the mushroom world is my world. I go there, I'm like, oh, finally, I'm allowed to be myself. You don't have to do this crazy social dance, and you don't have to pretend anything. You just basically yourself, and that's the beauty of it. But yeah, they told me you have to do it as often as possible. But at the same time, they control when I'm supposed to trip, to a point where a long time ago I was trying to get some mushrooms, and I finally got my hands on them, and turns out there were little maggots, worms in them.
Oh, wow.
And I was so crazy because I couldn't do it for 6 months, and then one day I got them, and I'm like, I cannot eat them because there are worms in them. So even
Yeah.
when I got them, I was not allowed to. But eventually, I think that was during my ban, when I was not allowed to trip, up to the point where I was taking mushrooms and I wasn't tripping at all, like no reaction. And then 6 months, like you look on the dot, 6 months, and I'm back in the world. And they said that was a lesson.
It
So
sounds like they're turning you off like they turned my phone off.
yeah,
They
yeah,
just
that's the
like they
same.
just powered you down, and they'll say we'll turn you back on when we say, and otherwise you're not functioning.
Yeah,
So
yeah, no, that's what it is. And yeah, you get a lot of those negative comments. You know what people say. Once YouTube starts promoting your video on other, not only your channel but somewhere else, people go, are you sure you don't have schizophrenia? And you're like, no, it's not possible to have selective schizophrenia only when I take mushrooms, and then I make videos about that, and then I go back to regular life when I don't have schizophrenia. It makes no sense.
yeah.
But it's you have to somehow, but at the same time you need to, as we are going through all of this crazy reality now that is downgraded and where everything makes no sense. I think one of the biggest challenges will be staying sane and basically understanding what it is that we're all collectively going through. Because I can imagine, like, I look at people who commit suicide differently. I look differently at people who go crazy. Like, our reality is not really that stable. When you look at,
Hmm.
they took away movie theaters, and I don't know what to do with myself every
Right.
Saturday. One of those
I
little
know.
things, and then
Well,
it's,
yeah. Yeah.
and you're like,
I'm seeing that here where people are reaching their threshold of not being able to do the things that they want to do, to socialize and go out with their friends and go to movie theaters, and like you were saying. And yeah, it's an inconvenience, and yeah, it's a bummer we can't do it, but there are people that are like having breakdowns over this. And I'm saying, am I the one who's crazy, or maybe is it society that has conditioned us to be so dependent upon stimulation and sports and social stuff to the point where it's like withdrawing from a drug to not be able to go out and socialize. Does that sound crazy, or does psychedelics sound crazy? To me, it sounds crazy the way we normally lived.
well, for me personally, it's quite difficult when I listen to music, because I always listen to, when I edit videos, I listen to just DJ sets, those long 1 hour mixing sets, like someone's playing back from the 90s or whatever. And it fills me with sadness. Like, I listen to this because I realize that if those in power want to take this away or want to continue doing this stupid lockdown thing, this will be one of the main things that will go away. People will not be allowed to go to the parties,
Yeah.
and that's one of the industries that is hit the hardest probably when it comes to the entertainment industry, because people cannot get together. But at the same time, it makes me sad because I know that that's the core and the foundation of human existence. We are social creatures and we need to be together, or whatever it is, whether it's going out to a party, dancing next to somebody else, just going to raves, or creating something like a YouTube channel like 434, where like-minded people get together. At the moment, we're only allowed to do it in the, in the virtual world, in the digital world. We don't have the physical possibility to get together. And I was actually quite surprised that this is such a significant part of my life. Like, I learned about myself something I didn't know. Like, I didn't realize that this is a part of my reality. It doesn't feel like it's important. Like someone tells you, well, we're going to cut off your hand, or we're going to take away your ability to go to a party. I'm like, yeah, I don't want to go to a party. I need my hand. But when everything else is okay, and they telling you, we're going to take away now your ability to go to concerts and parties and raves, then it becomes an issue, because it turns out that it is a very important part of a normal life. And I think one of the realizations that we all have is that there's a lot of seemingly trivial stuff that our lives are filled with, but at the same time, when you get them all together, it turns out that's what your life's about. It's not those major things. I mean, they
Right.
still are, like love and everything else, but when you have that, the rest is still very, very important. So I think that's one of the things that we all learn about each other.
Right. And like, just like you were saying, like the freedom to be able to just go on vacation with your family and
Yeah,
have that suddenly taken away.
exactly.
And not just that one thing, but everything. Like, not only that, but you can't go to the movies, and you can't go to a sporting event, and you can't, and it's so many changes all at the same time that if you're a kind of person that doesn't like to ever be alone with your thoughts and be quiet and not have some sort of distraction going on, it must be horrible. I
Yeah.
mean, I know people that they cannot be in the house without having the TV on,
Oh
because they
yeah.
have to have some noise, because they don't want to ever hear their own thoughts, or they don't want to be quiet for a moment. I think a lot of the noise that we had in our lives before, with running around to errands and always filling every minute of the day with some sort of activity, when that was turned off, suddenly we realized how much of that was not needed, and then which things really were part of our lives that are really important, to things like our hobbies and our family and our travel and things like that. And then all the other stuff that went away, like, silly meetings at the office that you could do at home, and trips to Walmart a million times in a weekend. I mean, all that stuff, just like, we feel better without it. But the stuff that we miss, it really has emphasized the things that are really important to us that we're now missing. And this is temporary. This isn't going to be forever. They can't
Yeah.
make it forever, because it's all money based. And if it's money based, it's coming back. So,
This is something I wanted to ask you, how long it will take for the whole reality to go back. Just wanted to mention one more thing, that what you've just explained about the physical reality, I think it also applies to the metaphysical reality and what's happening now with everything falling apart, and just this leftover of a reality that we're dealing with at the moment. Those things, like a sense of order that you had in life. I mean, it doesn't seem like a very important thing, but subconsciously, now that it's missing, you're like,
hmm
oh, this is actually something very important in my life. Like this
hmm
sense, you wake up every morning thinking, God damn, this doesn't make sense, but I have to go
hmm
through the day with this. This creates a tiny fraction in your time and space continuum that you're operating in every day. And it's starting to, it's like death by a thousand cuts. You start to
hmm
slowly realize that, oh, it wasn't that bad today. Let's go to sleep. But next day you wake up, you don't only have to deal with this same type of stuff, but already with what you've experienced yesterday. And it
Right.
feels like it's all gaining, like it's getting more and more. It's like collecting a big pile of like a giant issue now that is growing every day. So
Yeah.
it's not just in a physical sense; it's also in a metaphysical sense. And I hope this shift ends. But this is supposed to be the next thing I wanted to talk to you about. What do you feel uh, is going to happen when it's going to shift, or when it's going to end? And also, how do you feel about the length of the time will take for this to shift?
Well, see, being the analytical person I am, I would search for when was the last time this happened and how long did it take then, but we don't know. I
Yeah.
don't know if this has ever happened before, and maybe it hasn't. So there's no way to know for sure, but my feeling is that this came on, well, this was happening for a while and it wasn't noticed, and then it rapidly accelerated, and now we're all noticing it. And I think it's just gonna it's gonna work itself out in sort of a progressive way. It's not going to suddenly end one day and we're in the new whatever the paradigm is. I think it's going to be an evolution, and I would say probably within the next year. This next year, coming at the end of this year and into next year, I think we're finally going to see some return to normalcy with everything, and we'll be able to come out the other side of this and see what the new normal is as far as any worldwide changes or shifts. But I mean, it's happening even when you don't. I think it's happening even when you don't feel it. Like it's happening right now. Even maybe something hasn't happened in the news or some big synchronicity hasn't happened, but it's continually in motion. It's like that big steamroller thing that takes the space shuttle to the launch pad. And it's so big you can't hardly see it move, but it's moving, and it's moving that big giant structure all the way to the launch pad a little bit at a time. And then, you look the next day and it's moved. It's something like that. It's crawling very slowly, but it's making progress every second of the day to wherever it's going. So How long is it going to be? I don't know. I hope it's soon. And what's it going to look like on the other side? All I can say is what I hope it looks like. I think a lot of it has to do with us. I think a lot of this has to do with, well, what sort of reality do we want to be in? What kind of a world do we want? And I think it's pretty clear from what we've seen going on in the world that the people have a voice, and masses of people, when they decide to get together and say something, they say it loud. So if people decide to come together and make a change in some way or think in a new way, it's going to happen. And you probably won't have to do a whole lot of convincing them. Like I said, how many people you have that listen to you that are on the same page with all this and are wanting the same thing? The collective consciousness, I think, is what's going to shift this in the direction that we want it to go. I really hope things don't get worse. I don't know. Could go either way, but I'm thinking positive. I'm having a good feeling about this, and like I was telling you, from what I understood, that this upgrade that happened with our dimension and our universe, whatever, is a good thing. I had no indication whatsoever that anything is going to be bad in the long run. Although I didn't get any details though. So I just have to hope for that and believe in whatever I was shown.
Yeah, because it's very easy have a very human approach to it, just doom and gloom, complaining that reality has changed, but no one really thinks long term, trying to understand the benefits of, even if it's a struggle, even if it's a very important lesson, that at the end of the day, there might be some very important conclusions that you come to. There'll be a lot of stuff that will change you in a very positive way. Whatever it is that you're here for, whatever it is that you need to do, maybe it will get you closer to your purpose. So that's something that most of us don't take into account. And I agree with you. I feel like this is a positive change, a positive shift. The only question is, what will we call this podcast? Will it be a global awakening? Will it be a reality shift? Or will it be a consciousness change? What would you say?
I think it's going to be an evolution. Well, it's going to be an evolution and a revolution, really. The revolution is the obvious part. That's the part we're seeing every day. And the evolution is the part that we don't see, but that's happening in the background. Things are changing into new things. And what we see on the outside and what we're seeing, with our five senses every day, I think, is the revolution. That's the visible, physical, tangible changes going on. And the evolution is the development that's going on behind the scenes that's driving it all. So I guess it's a two-part thing. But you know what? At the end of the day, it's a lot like me taking my cat to the vet. He's stressed out. He hates it. He thinks I'm trying to kill him. His whole world is falling apart and he's miserable. And I take him there and it's this horrible experience. And all they're trying to do is help him. And then he feels a lot better afterward. But he has no comprehension of what's going on. And for him, it just looks like this horrible, bad, evil thing going on. And he doesn't see the bigger picture, that not only is none of it bad, but none of it's going to hurt him. And in the end, he's going to be better. So,
that's a
maybe
great
that's
metaphor.
just us, maybe we're like great pets for some interdimensional beings, and I don't know.
Yeah, well, it's definitely not boring. That's something that we can all agree on, that this what's happening now, this is definitely something that I mean, who talks about the elections in November? Nobody.
Nobody.
Nobody cares. There's so much stuff happening that you cannot keep up with
This
all
is
this.
exciting. This is better
Yeah.
than any Netflix series I've ever seen. You know,
Yeah.
living in these times is fascinating. And then being on the cutting edge of psychedelics during these fascinating times, I feel really happy to be alive right now, actually, to be seeing this and not to be learning about this 30 years from now by somebody else telling me what happened.
Yeah, it's funny how it's slowly becoming synonymous, like the word awakening. It's slowly starting connecting with psychedelics. It's
Hmm.
slowly becoming the same thing. And I know because I post on Reddit a lot of stuff, and I started being more bold with posting my information about machine of information on the Awaken subreddits. And I used to face a lot of backlash, and now it's like, oh, okay, welcome. Let's
Hmm.
hear what you have to say. I can see like the thing is slowly shifting and changing in a way that the perception of this is very different. It's no longer this type of tree hugging type of woohoo stuff. It's something that people are slowly starting to accept and realize that there are forces in the world that are bigger than anything that we know, and they're starting to accept it.
I think you're right. And I think that there's a lot of people that are accepting that idea of awakening, whereas maybe several years ago they would have said, oh, that's only for somebody that wakes up every day and, starts their day with their horoscope. That's only for those kind of people. But I think now you're seeing people that never even considered uh, the relevancy of any kind of awakening. They're looking at what's going on around them and they can't explain it any other ways. What the rapid changes that have happened in our world, and it's scary to them. And
Right.
so they look for answers, and in looking for answers as to what is going on, that's the beginning of actually starting your own awakening, is by searching for the answers. So you've got people who've never even in a million years thought they would be associated with any kind of awakening that are now asking, how can I be part of this?
That's really encouraging. When I see those voices, when I see people who come from, the regular world, air quotes, and I see them realizing that something's not right after sitting at home for 3 months and trying to figure out who they are and what they do in life,
Hmm.
and realizing a lot of it is meaningless. It's nice to actually see them to come to their senses and realize that life's more than three dimensions, that there's more stuff happening around them. And yeah, that's
Yeah.
the most basic stuff that people can learn from, because if you don't learn from your own discomfort, where you're going to learn from? Because this is probably one of
Yeah.
the best teachers. If you don't feel comfortable with you sitting at home, then I think it's time for you to reevaluate everything and gain some new perspective on yourself and life in general, I feel.
Well, I think a lot of societies, I know over here for sure, they don't put a whole lot of stock in people really knowing who they are. Who are they as an identity? It's your identity is your job, your vocation, what other people think of you, your education, and all these external things. So when you take all that away, especially if you take them off the assembly line of their life and you sit them in a timeout, they don't know who they are outside of their normal routine and job function. And I think that's been a lot of the trauma that people have had, is that who am I without going to work? Who am
Yeah.
I without being able to do my sports and without being able to do this and that? And they've turned inward to, I need to find these answers to get through this. And I
This
think
must
that's where we're
be
getting this wave of people that are suddenly, if you want to say awakened, that's where it's coming from. They're trying to figure out who they are in this new paradigm.
But this must be terrifying for someone who's never had time or willingness to look deep inside, and then be in
Yeah.
this situation globally and
Hmm.
having to basically look deep inside. This is not a good way to actually rediscovering yourself. I mean, it's good as any other way, but still, I would much rather sit in front of a meadow and try to meditate, figuring
Hmm.
things out. Wayne Dyer
Yeah.
once said a very important thing. He said, "If you think you are your job, then imagine who you are once the job goes away."
Hmm.
And that's a big issue. I mean, I remember having people at work who would come back from their vacation. They were supposed to stay at home. They wouldn't go anywhere for 2 weeks, and halfway through it, they were like, "I cannot do this anymore. Like, I
Hmm.
cannot sit at home. How much TV can you watch?" And I had to go back to work. I'm like, this is the most terrifying example of emptiness
Yes.
that you can come up with. Because if you come here to do your job, I mean, I don't know if you've heard about this, people who retire, very
Hmm.
often they just die. They don't even commit
Yeah.
suicide. They just die as if they didn't have any more purpose in this reality.
Oh, I've got people that I work with that are afraid to retire because they don't want
Yeah,
that happening, and they're in their 80s,
that's
and
insane.
they've spent a lifetime of amassing all this wealth, and they are afraid to retire because they're afraid they're going to die in 2 weeks if they do. And that's to me is like a terminal illness in itself,
It
where you
is.
you can't quit working because that's what's keeping you alive. I don't want to be that. Sorry.
Yeah, I made a video on Peter Hedron called "Awesome Numbers," and it's the question. It's also from Wayne Dyer. Is you have to ask yourself whether you live um, a life which is 30,000 separate days, or whether you live the same. Your life is the same day
Hmm.
30,000 times, and it's pretty much the same difference for people whether you choose to experience something new every day and rediscover, you discover something, not even rediscover, or whether you want to just stay in the same, autopilot mode and do the same stuff every day. So, if there is a global awakening and reality shift, I think these people will be either the winners or the victims of it. Either way,
Hmm.
they'll have to learn, or they'll get left behind. I don't know what happens to them when it happens, but I wish everybody all the best. I hope that people realize what's going on and realize that this distraction is not basically something they need to be scared of. It's not something they need to be worried about. It's basically a huge lesson and an opportunity, but this time happening on a global scale.
Yeah, and the way it was explained to me, as far as quote everyone getting the upgrade, was that most people will just flow into it. So if you look at it that way, sure you have to agree to it, but in agreeing to just go along with the changes that are happening and to, make the decision to be part of this, the not resist the flow of what's going on, you've agreed to the upgrade pretty much. But there's going to be people that resist, that absolutely want things to go backward, and those are going to be the ones that have the biggest problem. And I
Yeah.
hope everybody agrees to just go with the flow and embrace the new higher level of wherever we're headed. But like you said, the ones that are running the show right now don't want to give up the show very easily. So
Yeah, I just hope that everybody realizes that there's nothing behind us. The past and everything that's left is just crumbs of old reality. Because whether,
hmm.
even if everything goes back to exactly as it was, our mindsets will not be the same. Everything will be totally different. And I
Right.
hope that people realize that they will need to adjust to a completely new type of thinking, not just because of what's happening outside, because that's not really that significant, but it's what it made us aware of and what it made us
Hmm.
realize. So if
Right.
anyone is listening to this thinking that they're waiting for things to go back to normal and the old reality, I think that's all gone. And I think they need to create a new reality for themselves.
Right. Yeah, I mean, you can't go back to what was before without the memories of everything that's happened since. Even if you
Exactly.
could reset everything and COVID's gone and you go right back to your normal life, we've still lived through the last, 6, 7 months, and nothing's going to change that. And we've seen what we've seen, and we've been through what we've been through. So, yeah, no, there is no real going back to normal. It's establishing a new one.
Yeah. So that's good. That's all a great lesson. That's a great exercise in this training ground arena, and I hope everybody comes out of it okay and better people than they were before. So thank you very much for this. I hope people have it helped. I hope it helped a lot of people what we talked about. It should get people like new perspective maybe, or some additional ideas about how they're supposed to deal with the reality and everything that's happening. Anything else you want to add at the end?
No, just thank you so much for having me on again. And it's always great to talk to you. And I really appreciate everything that you're doing and that the community that you've built. And I've met so many really awesome people through you, and they wouldn't have found me if it hadn't been for you. So I thank you for that.
Fantastic, my pleasure. And as always, everybody's listening, and everybody wants to go to Starpilot's YouTube channel. The links are in the video description. Thanks a lot.
Thank you.